The New York Islanders roster for the start of the 2025-2026 season is nearly set. We'll break it down for you, talk about the keys to the season and the latest rumors, all that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com. and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today and talk a little Islanders hockey, and boy, we have got a lot to get to. The Islanders' final preseason game will be tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers. The roster pretty close to being completed. We'll talk about that, where we stand with the roster, the latest trade rumors, including a mailbag question from you, our listeners, and we'll talk about the impact that health will play on this season for the New York Islanders. Let's get started with the roster and where it stands now, because there were a couple of moves, as mentioned yesterday, that the Islanders made. They basically placed Marcus Hogberg, the goalie, and Matthew Highmore on waivers. Well, both of them have cleared waivers, and that means that they will report to Bridgeport. So again, David Rittich, officially the backup goalie. Hogberg and Highmore, sounds like a law firm, they will be heading down to Bridgeport, and certainly Bridgeport can use the veteran experienced goaltender, so that will help. And by the way, Bridgeport played their first preseason game on Tuesday, and they beat the Hartford Wolfpack, the Rangers AHL affiliate, by a score of 6-3. So a little farm report before there's a farm report, but when you've had as rough a go as Bridgeport has in recent years, obviously even just winning one game is an encouraging start for the preseason. Now, the other issue is this. We're really down to the nitty-gritty here. There's only a few players left who are fighting for roster spots. And one player who is still on the big roster is young defenseman Isaiah George. And George has had a really solid training camp this year. Again, the thing about Isaiah George, he is not flashy. He is not the kind of player who shows up often in highlight reels. But he's one of those guys where if you watch him every day and he's playing up to his potential and the way he should be playing, he's just sort of quietly efficient. Well, George is still with the big club, but I do not expect that to last very long. Here's what Patrick Waugh had to say about that. He said, "What I really want to see is him getting experience, having a chance to see the guys and how they play. He probably won't play in Philly. That's tonight's final preseason game. But I think it's good for him to be around the guys and to learn what it is to be a pro. Don't forget, he's only 21 years old, so he's learning every day. And I think this is a good experience to be around because we've got quality people on the back end, and I think he could learn a lot from these guys." So, look, Waugh also added that he has seen progress from Isaiah George, who, if you recall, everydayers last year played really well, maybe the first 20 of the 33 games he played, maybe even a little more, got hurt, kind of struggled a little bit in the final 5-7 games that he played before being sent back down to Bridgeport. Woes said, yes, I do see growth. He said, I think confidence is a big thing. And I think he skates very well. He defends very well. So I think being around our guys will help him. And so this is the last defense move, right? You have 8 defensemen right now on the roster. 6 are going to be playing on nearly every game. Occasionally there'll be 7, but for the most part, it'll be 6 guys. And so what we're looking at is, Romanov, D'Angelo, Pelech, Polak, Mayfield, and Schaefer, with Adam Boqvist set to be the 7th defenseman, and Isaiah George, still not officially, but all but inevitably heading down to Bridgeport. And goalie is set. Ilya Sorokin going to be the starter. David Rittich will start the season as the backup. Semyon Varlamov will start on IR. Don't know yet, and it'll be interesting to see whether that turns out to be IR or LTIR. LTIR, he's got to miss at least 10 games. But we'll see, what Matthew Darche designates Varley as. But as of right now, that's where we're going to start. And then you go to the forward position where you have the most issues. And the issues basically are that, we don't know who's going to play where. So you got Horvat, Drouin, Heineman, Barzal, Lee, and Palmieri, Pageau, Shabanov, and Holmstrom, Cizikas, Duclair, and Siplikov. Those were the line combinations in the last preseason game against the Rangers, or at least in practice. And that's what we anticipate seeing in the last preseason game against Philadelphia. You still have Kyle McLean. You still have Mark Gatcomb. Pierre Engvall remains on the injured list. He is not, as of now, practicing with the team. And you have Cal Ritchie, who is still on the big roster and who I think should be on the big club sooner rather than later. But it looks more and more like Ritchie is going to start the season with Bridgeport, barring the possibility of some kind of trade or trades or a waiver pickup or, some kind of a move by Matthew Darche between now and the start of the season. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. But here we are with the most competitive roster the Islanders have had in a few years, as far as having more NHL caliber players on the roster than roster spots, which, everydayers know one of the criticisms of Lou Lamoriello, not just by me, but by a lot of people, was the so-called country club atmosphere around the New York Islanders. That this team, too many players were too comfortable. There wasn't enough accountability, in part because there wasn't enough depth to tell people, hey, if you don't play well, we've got 3 guys either in the press box or down in Bridgeport who could step in and play, and you could be benched. Well, there should be a little bit more accountability this year with the added depth that Matthew Darche has helped to supply. And again, hopefully we will see some more moves being made between now and certainly the trade deadline. I'd even like to see 1 or 2 moves made before the start of the season. But, we're getting really close. Believe it or not, we are 1 week away exactly right now from the start of the 2025-2026 Islanders season. I am very excited about that. Last preseason game is tonight against the Flyers. And, we'll see how Patrick Waugh handles the goaltending situation, how he handles it looks like we know who the defensemen are going to be, how he handles Cal Ritchie. We'll see all of that tonight, and it will be interesting to see how it all plays out and how those final moves are made. We're going to talk a little bit about some trade rumors and what makes sense for the Islanders as we get closer and closer to the regular season. We have one of your mailbag questions, and we'll talk about the importance of health for the Islanders. Plus, well, for our Islanders birthday of the day, we have got a forward who was both beloved and reviled by fans at different times, but he was so popular, this former first rounder had fans chanting his name in a song. It's an easy one. Let's see if you can get that. We'll talk about him and his impact on the team. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays that help increase my odds. I've tried player props and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So head to FanDuel.com today to get started. FanDuel.com, check it out today. So we're going to dip into the mailbag. Always love to do this. This one is from Joe in Vero Beach, Florida. And Joe, sorry it took a few days to get this to you and address this question. Hi, Gil. As always, love the show, and I'm excited for the season to begin. My question concerns trade rumors that we very often hear, usually involving J.G. Pageau or Anders Lee, and lately also involving the Florida Panthers. With the injury to Alexander Barkov, do you think the Panthers would be interested in making a bigger splash in a trade since they will be vying for a third straight Stanley Cup? Is there a possibility that they could be interested in Matt Barzal or Bo Horvat? Would the Islanders be interested in such a move, considering the return would be so much greater than they would receive for Pageau? Looking forward to your thoughts. Thanks, Joe from Vero Beach. Joe, first of all, thank you for the email and for the kind words about the show. Always appreciate that. Your question has a few different moving parts. And let's start with this. You first asked, would the Florida Panthers be interested in acquiring a Bo Horvat or a Matthew Barzal? And I think the answer is yes, although whether they would be able to easily fit them under the salary cap is another issue. But before any major deal like that with a Bo Horvat or Matthew Barzal, I even saw from a source online that, I don't know how reliable it is, but that the Vancouver Canucks might be interested in getting Bo Horvat back, although the offer that they were, supposedly giving back to the Islanders was nothing near what it would take to get Bo Horvat. But here's the thing. The Islanders are probably not interested in dealing either Matthew Barzal or Bo Horvat, certainly not at this stage of the season. And I'll tell you why. Not that I'm saying I agree with it, but I'll tell you why. If you trade Bo or Barzy, your two highest paid forwards and your two best offensive forwards at this point, if you trade one or both of them, you are, for all intents and purposes, telling your fan base, we are not going to make the playoffs most likely this year. This is a retool or even possibly a rebuild. And we're just, not winning right now. So that's issue one. And that's something that ownership has not been in favor of, even before Matthew Darche was hired. And then again at Matthew Darche's introductory press conference, Darche said, hey, I think this team can make the playoffs. I still think that's less than a 50-50 shot. But yes, this team, their ceiling is probably squeaking into the playoffs as one of the last wild card teams in there. That's been their ceiling for the last 4 or 5 years. But if you trade Bo or Barzy, you're giving up on that. And ownership wants a full building. They want to sell tickets. Now, would it make sense, in my mind, for this team to take a step back, to take 2 steps forward, to accelerate the retool or rebuild? Yeah, it would. But I don't think there's much of a chance of that happening, at least until we see that this team is probably not making the playoffs. We get to December or January and the Islanders are just not doing well, really not doing well. Then maybe we can look at, trading more of these veterans. The other issue is this. Bo Horvat has a full no-trade clause. Matthew Barzal has a list of 22 teams that he will not be traded to. That means there are 9 teams that he's willing to go to. Now, look, Barzy could always waive the no-trade clause, but I don't think that's going to happen. But, there are 9 teams you could deal him to, and how many of them can afford the $9.15 million cap hit all the way through till 2031? It just is unlikely that either one of these 2 guys will get moved, barring the season kind of bottoming out. The other issue is this, and everydayers, you'll recall I have mentioned this and addressed it. The Florida Panthers don't have a first-round pick in 2026, don't have a first-round pick in 2027. And their farm system is, because they've been winning so often in recent years and made moves at the trade deadline in order to keep winning in the present, their farm system is not full of really, really highly regarded prospects. So I think the Panthers, unless there is a third team integrated into the trade, I don't think the Panthers have the picks, the prospects, or the young NHL-ready players like another Cal Ritchie, let's say, who the Islanders could want back in a major deal like that. Even if you're dealing just J.G. Pageau, and when I say just, like you said in your email, Joe, Pageau is not as big a trade as if you trade Barzal or Horvat. So even if it's just Pageau, I don't know if the Panthers have the ammunition needed in order to make a deal that the Islanders, to give the Islanders more or less what they're looking for. Again, a third team could always get involved, and that certainly could make a deal a lot more possible, but I think it's a long shot. Now, what I would like to see, a move or 2. The Islanders have 2 or 3 surplus forwards right now, even beyond having 2 guys sitting up in the press box. I would like to see Cal Ritchie on the NHL roster in the lineup sooner rather than later. And to me, if you can get a first-round pick for J.G. Pageau, or if someone is willing to take a Pierre Engvall off your hands, or Casey Cizikas, or if you get a really blockbuster offer for Anders Lee, I'm in favor of doing those moves sooner than later. In my mind, you set a price for those players. This is what they're worth to us. If somebody meets that price, you go for it. Somebody meets that price, you go out there and take that deal, bring in Cal Ritchie, free up a little more cap space, bring in picks, prospects, or young players, and accelerate the retool. Bowen Barzy and Ilya Sorokin are probably the three guys who are off limits right now. And obviously Schaefer, but no one's going to even ask. But those guys are off limits unless the bottom falls out of this season. You get to December or January and the Islanders are, a distant 7th or 8th in the Metro and out of realistic playoff contention. Then there's no excuse not to make a whole bunch of trades to accelerate this retool. I would like to see 4, 5, maybe even 6 of the surplus veterans or the older players moved on from by the trade deadline this year. You've got a really deep draft in 2026. You've already got 2 first-round picks this year. I'd love to add a third. I'd love to add another Cal Ritchie type NHL-ready prospect. All of these things are on my mind as we approach the season. And again, as I've said, and everydayers will recall, this year, if the Islanders have success, that's a bonus. I don't anticipate that the Islanders will be a playoff team. I think they'll be in the conversation until February or March. I don't think they're going to be a dreadful team, especially if Sorokin has a decent year. But I do think that they are just a little short of playoff caliber. And I think that the biggest and most important thing is developing the young players and accelerating the retool, getting more picks, prospects, and younger players, and improving this team for the long run and developing those kids while you're at it. We've got more to get to on today's show. We'll talk about the importance of health this year. It was certainly a big problem for the Islanders last year. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Health. It was a killer last year. The Islanders lost a lot of man games to injury. They were among the highest number of man games lost to injury of any team in the league. And unfortunately for the New York Islanders, this is a team with a lot of older players with long injury histories. Varley is already on IR. We don't know if he's coming back. We have seen players like Ryan Pollock, Adam Pelech, Matthew Barzal miss significant time due to injury. Anthony Duclair last year missed a lot of time due to injury. Jonathan Drouin has a history of missing a lot of time due to injury. And look, you say what you want. Ultimately, when you have a roster with a lot of guys who are 30 or over, injuries are more likely. And when they do happen, they usually take longer for older players to recover and get back into the lineup. So you've got Bo Horvat, 30, Anders Lee, 35, J.G. Pageau, 32, Kyle Palmieri, 34, Jonathan Drouin, 30, Anthony Duclair, 30. That's just among the forwards. Pelech, 30, 31 rather, Pollock, 30, Mayfield, 32, Sorokin, 30, Rittich, 33. That's a lot of older guys on this roster. And look, if you add up all the players on this roster and everybody stays healthy, is it realistically possible that the Islanders' offense will be better than it was a year ago? Yes, it absolutely is. You've got a good, young, puck-moving defenseman in Matthew Schaefer. You've got a solid puck-moving defenseman, offensively at least, in Tony DeAngelo. You've got Drouin and Duclair, who the Islanders did not have last year, both of whom are capable of giving you 15 to 20, maybe in Duclair's case, even a little more than 20 goals in a year. Matthew Barzal is healthy again, and if he can stay healthy, can he give you 15 to 20 goals and maybe 40 to 50, 55 assists? Yeah, he can be a point-a-game player if he's healthy and has the right line mates. So there is room for improvement here. But keep in mind that you're asking a bunch of players with long injury histories to have an injury-free season. And when I say injury-free, I'm not saying they all have to play 82 games, but get me over 70. Get me 73, 74 games from Matthew Barzal, from Adam Pelech, from Ryan Pollock, from Jonathan Drouin. Let these guys stay mostly healthy so they can be productive, make the power play better, make the offense better, improve this team from top to bottom. And again, the Islanders, the way this roster is set up, they are not going to go from the 28th ranked offense in the league to third. Okay, the talent, they just don't have a legitimate sniper on this team, and they haven't had one since Ziggy Palffy in the late 90s. They don't have that guy. Elite teams have two or three of them. The Islanders offensively do not. But if you can go from 28th in the league in goals scored to 18th and get the goals against back up to a respectable spot where, you know, this team gets solid backup goaltending and continued good goaltending from Ilya Sorokin, who doesn't get overworked and doesn't get injured. Yeah, this team can fight for one of the last playoff berths in the Eastern Conference. But you're asking a lot from guys with long injury histories and with advanced age to not get hurt and to play a full season to their potential. Could it happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. A few of these guys are probably going to miss some time, and the Islanders may not have enough depth, depending on who it is that's missing, to make up for the needed offense. But we'll see, and hope springs eternal. Let's hope this team, even if they just have an average number of injuries, they can certainly be better than they were a year ago. And remember, they were 9 points out of a playoff berth last year. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we're going to wish a happy 36th birthday to former Islanders forward Josh Bailey. The Bowmanville, Ontario native, 6'1", 200 pounds, first-round pick, 9th overall for the Islanders back in 2008. Yeah, they kind of rushed him into the NHL, but he stayed with the Islanders from 2008, 2009, all the way to 2022, 2023. Played 1,057 games, all with the Islanders, 184 goals, 580 points, 241 penalty minutes, add 16 goals and 50 points in 71 playoff games. And the one thing I loved about Josh Bailey, he raised his game in the playoffs. You know, most players, their points per game level goes down in the playoffs. Bailey's went up. And you look back, for example, at the 2020 playoff run. In 22 games, he had 20 points, 2 goals, 18 assists. That's almost a point a game in the tighter checking, harder to score, less time and space playoffs. Josh Bailey tended to come up big in big situations, and it's something that was important for the Islanders. Did he fall off late in his career? Yeah, he did. And the way he left the Islanders was less than ideal. But I think in the long run, Josh Bailey will always be remembered as a really good player for the Islanders for more than a decade. Fans loved him until they didn't late in his career, but I always was a Josh Bailey fan, and he's a classy guy on and off the ice. We take a look at one of his better games as an Islander, November 22nd, 2017 at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Islanders hosting the Flyers. Brian Elliott, the goalie for Philadelphia. Tomas Greiss, the goalie for the Islanders. And in this one, with the Islanders trailing 1-0 late in the first period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Josh Bailey, sets up Matthew Barzal for a power play goal. Shane Gostisbehere in the box. Anders Lee, the other assist that made the score 1-1 after 1. In the second period, with the Islanders trailing 2-1, Bailey and John Tavares set up Johnny Boychuk on the power play. That ties the game at 2. The game was tied at 3 heading into overtime, but 32 seconds into the extra session, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Josh Bailey scores the game winner. Nick Leddy and John Tavares with the assist. Islanders beat the Flyers 4-3 in this game. For Josh Bailey, he had a goal and 2 assists. He was a +1. And he had 6 shots on goal, which led all Islanders players in 20 minutes and 54 seconds of ice time. And yes, he scored the overtime game winner. So Josh Bailey, is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. For your second listen, go find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone provide daily fantasy tips to give you the edge over your league mates, all while making you a smarter hockey fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. And I'm live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. And it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Everydayers, we're back tomorrow. We'll have some key takeaways from the final preseason game against Philadelphia. We'll update you on any injury and roster news and have all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.